yeah, g'day. My name's Matt. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I run a studio called Sub-Zero Sound. We're just a game audio studio. We do everything from audio design, implementation for games. So today's talk is not going to be too heavy. We will be talking about game audio in general, not specific to mobile, although we will look at some mobile, some technology. So it'll be pretty entry level, mainly aimed at developers. And if you're a sound designer or if you're involved in audio, you might already know a bit of this stuff. So yeah, don't feel bad if you know something. You can feel good. You can give yourself a bit of a pat on the back. So just to get an idea of who's in the room, who's a developer? Yeah, you are? Cool. All right. Anyone in sound? Cool, a few of you. So yeah, once again, if you're already in sound, you probably might know a lot of this stuff. It's going to be pretty entry level, but you know, it should be a pretty fun session. We've got some audio clips to go through and some videos, so we may as well get started. So a bit more about me and my studio, Sub-Zero Sound. We're a Melbourne-based game audio studio. We do everything from asset design, implementation, audio bug testing. There's a lot of bugs. And we're a core team of two, so myself and Dan Penbrace. We started the studio once we finished studying in 2016, and we've been working in mainly the Australian industry since then, but lately we've been branching out and working with more developers across the globe and around Australia. So we're a dynamic team, so there's the two of us at the core. However, when we need to bring on more people to help us with a busy period of time, we can do that. So we have sort of an expanding team to accommodate our projects. We both have a background in audio engineering, so we both studied audio production. We've got to come from the sort of music mixing, editing side of things. So that's our background. So we mostly do sound design. Both having a background in music, we tend to, if we get a project and the developer wants music, usually because we have such a great network in Melbourne, we are able to pull in a musician who has a particular style that suits that project. So that's the good part about having such a wide network. So this is just some projects that we've worked on recently. So our thing is we bring media to life and immerse players in the games, creating sonic worlds that don't feel repetitive. And so we handle projects from start to finish in order to ship great sounding games. A lot of the time, developers just want a few things. So most recently, I work on Super Auto Pets and Train Conductor World, which is that second one. Those games are already out and just needed some sounds for an update. So that was a pretty short project, but lots of fun. Yeah, we have a lot of fun in what we do. We're currently working on Moving Out 2, which is that first one there. That's a sequel to the 2020 game Moving Out, which did relatively well. It's a Melbourne game, Studio SMG. So we worked across all platforms. Moving Out 2 is obviously coming to consoles and PC, Train Conductor World, iOS, Android. Super Auto Pets is on PC and mobile. UFO on Tape, which is that other one there, is a Apple Arcade title. And the others are, PC, console. Gadgeteer is a VR title, another one that we just did a little bit of work on to fill in for an update they were doing. And Shape Arcade, which is an interesting one, which is a project which is being developed for mobile and also a physical cabinet at the same time. So it's a fun one. I've actually got an example from that to show later on. Oh, this is moody. Cool. So lots of different projects spanning all genres, all platforms. We've made ourselves quite diverse in what we do. We'll work on games regardless of platform or genre. So cool. I think it's enough there. Let's move on. So now that we can get started, this is what we're going to be going over today. It's not going to be too deep, but we'll cover a few different topics, so we'll move quite fast. We're going to be going over the role of audio in games, looking at what audio does for games, whether they're immersive experiences or more casual games. And we'll also have a look at some games with some great sound. So that'll be a fun example we can look at. Looking at resources, talking about games with great bang for buck, talking about CPU, file size, memory, all that fun stuff, which I'm sure a lot of you are here for that. And then we're going to be looking at some tools, so some common tools that sound designers use, common tools that developers use when they're working with sound, etc. And then we're going to be talking about money. What's it cost? So let's move on. So first thing, what role does audio play? And sound does several key things in a game. So the first one is it delivers information and context to the player about the world of the game. This is stuff like, is there a monster nearby? If you're playing an FPS, that's, knowing the enemy location, what is the goal? What are you looking for? This is all critical stuff to giving players information that they need, especially in competitive games. There's an example from Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. In the Lost Woods section of the game, you're in sort of a puzzle. You need to find your way through it. It wouldn't make sense in that scenario to have a big waypoint marker pointing you where to go because it's a puzzle. But there is music that you can hear that sort of tells you where you're meant to go. It's a hint, but not too over the top. So sound plays a role there. Provides feedback for the player's actions. So obviously this covers UI. UI is primarily, feedback for the player, going hand in hand with, if you make a selection in a menu, you get the little bright outline, a little bit of sound to go along with it, makes that feel a lot more responsive. This also tells players if they're performing well or not, so audio feedback will just deliver that sort of information. Some of the very first games around this was primarily all the sound did. Think of Pong, whenever the ball hits the paddle in Pong, it makes that boop sound. That's just feedback to the player. And obviously it manipulates your emotions. And the most obvious example of this is music. Music is the driving force behind a lot of that immersion that you feel in a game, especially in like a narrative heavy game. Music is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. And it is actually the fastest way to change your mood, music. So that's, half the experience there in the Sonic realm is music. Also, from a sound design perspective, think horror games. For example, Amnesia. Consider how tense and atmospheric it feels when you have headphones on. Playing a horror game like that, that's all done on purpose to intensify what's happening on screen, make you feel incredibly tense. And yes, if you took the headphones off while playing a game like that, you would not feel as stressed, which might be a good thing. It's probably a bad thing. Play Amnesia with headphones on is a key takeaway there. So having all three pillars will result in a game that feels just correct, feels good. Audio is one of those things that when it's done poorly, you notice it. When it's done right, no one notices. Yeah, that's true. But players will know that something's off, even if they don't know exactly what that is. For example, I have this anecdote. I can't remember where it comes from, so if you know what this example is from, please let me know. Developers designing an FPS game were introducing a new gun to the game, and they had some playtesters check it out. They didn't like the new gun. It felt underpowered. They felt that they weren't playing very well when they used it. So the developers took that back and tried to figure out what was wrong with the gun. Actually ended up changing the sound, making it sound a lot chunkier, a lot more powerful. And next time the players tested their gun, they did a lot better. They felt it was more powerful, but it was all just the sound had changed. I can't remember where I heard that. If that's your other example, please let me know. But that's always a good one to lean back on. Sonic branding, another thing that sound can do for your game. One of the things I want to mention is creating a Sonic, like a brand, which hints at the quality of what might be to come. So games that sound great typically also are great. It's sort of this cohesive design. So games that lack in one area usually, it affects the experience negatively. So creating a Sonic identity for the game, or even a Sonic identity for your studio or publisher, is a good idea. And of course, the more someone plays a game, the more they get familiar with the music and the sound, and they begin to associate those sounds with the game and the game with those sounds. And it becomes this whole sort of resonating experience that players take home and they think about when they're not playing the game, and helps them remain loyal to your game. This is also a marketable selling point of the game. If your game has great sound, Usually, you want to tell people that, and games become known for having great sound. Much like realistic visuals or high FPS frame rate sells a game. It's difficult to put a number on it. How many sales have you gotten as a result of having good sound? It's hard to pinpoint, but it does contribute to a game having a cultural impact, in both the gaming sphere and beyond. Becoming something that's larger than the game itself. This is, you commonly see this with music soundtracks. Music soundtracks often are enjoyed long after a player has finished playing the game. However, what you can do sometimes is you see people come back to a game because they've been enjoying the soundtrack. For me, I do that with Bioshock. I love Bioshock. That's one of the first games that got me into designing sound for games. And when I listen to that, I want to play Bioshock again. I've got a few GIF examples, and I want to stress with this, who here watches Netflix? Yeah, okay, all of you, yeah. Can you hear that in your head? Yep, you know what that sounds like, yeah. So Netflix, they've got a really strong Sonic brand. Is that me? Yep. So their Sonic brand is very strong. They've crafted this logo, and they've considered audio as when they've made that. So yeah, myself, I hear this in my head as well, and I immediately feel more relaxed. So I won't be upset if anyone pulls out their phone and wants to start watching something in the audience now. Yeah, you're all forgiven. So our brains are hardwired to associate sound with memories. So this might remind you to catch up on your favorite show. And this happens as well, like listening to a band that you haven't listened to in a long time can transport you back to a time and place. For me, I listen to some older emo bands. I'm taken back to the school bus. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Just some more Sonic branding. I'm sure everyone knows what this sounds like. Yeah, that's it. For me, I didn't have a Sega, but a friend of mine did, so I'm immediately taken back to days spent at this friend's house playing games. No, there's actually no sounds here. You meant to do that yourself. Yep. What about this one? This might be, I don't know, if anyone here is a Unity dev. Sorry. For me, I worked on a game in... broke it. So for me, I worked on a game in 2018 that came out on Steam. It's called Chroma Shift. And that was being developed in Unreal Engine 4. And anytime I play tested the game or worked on the trailer, I would hear this, and it's baked into my brain. This splash screen is associated with that game. And it's not just branding, it's not just splash screens. We've obviously got iconic sounds in games. So God of War, not the one that just came out, although I'm sure that this features in that one as well. The axe throw and the recoil is iconic sound. Actually, the first thing that I was exposed to about the game. I haven't played it, but I have heard about this. You see, people find this feature very exciting. And again, there's no sound, but if you played the game, I'm sure you know what it sounds like. If you haven't played the game, just check it out on YouTube. And this is a sound that I think resonates with a lot of people. It's very satisfying to do, and that drives that enhances the gameplay experience. And of course, sticks around people's heads. So games with great soundtracks, they help the game reach a wider audience. I probably wouldn't have had this game on my radar. I mean, I would have known about it, of course, everyone knows about it, but it wouldn't have been at the front of my mind if it wasn't for this feature. So these are some other games with some great sound behind them, all for different reasons. Amnesia, which I mentioned before, incredibly tense. Mini Metro, which is a game out of New Zealand. Lots of great UI sounds, lots of feedback. Crypto the Necrodancer. Obviously a game with rhythm at the core of the gameplay experience. Alto's Odyssey, such a great marriage of sound and music and gameplay all together. Zelda Breath of the Wild, Yeah. And I'm sure if you've played these games, you'll know that they sound great, and possibly even remember some of your favorite parts as well. Honorable mentions that I wanted to put up: Limbo, Celeste, Bioshock, The Sims for their Simlish function feature. Alien Isolation, one of the sound design for that is actually based in Brisbane, Australia. Super Mario Odyssey, Bastion, No Straight Roads, and Doom. I can't forget Doom, and that soundtrack by Mick Gordon. So moving on to a different section now, we're doing more with less. So this is talking mainly about, again, the role that audio has and sort of the resourcefulness of it. So making a world feel alive at minimal cost to the team, the devices. So what we want to do with sound is create a world that feels rich and alive and lives on regardless of what you do. So whether you're standing still or engaging with the world, you want it to feel like it lives and breathes around you. And this is something that we're doing with our projects at the moment. We're making a game that sort of, regardless of if you're interacting with it or just standing there idle, it moves around you and it lives on without you. But we want to do this at a low cost. We want to fill in the details of the game or drive the game in a certain direction just with sound. So I'll bring up this example. This is a loop from a game called Crater. It's a Colombian indie game from the Last Order games. So without any sound, just looking at this now, we don't know what this should sound like. I mean, we can see that the character's dressed in some muted clothing, so we can assume that maybe it's a bit of a darker game. But without any other context, without seeing the world, we don't know if this is going to sound gritty and realistic, if it's going to sound sort of chiptune, or somewhere in between. So what I'll do is I will just play some of these sounds now, and we'll try to get an idea of what feels the most appropriate. So here we have So I'll let you decide what this sounds like with no other context, with no idea of what the world looks like, what the enemies or the other characters look like. Any of these sounds could be appropriate for this game. Or, something a bit stylized or in between like this. So yeah, as I said, anything could be appropriate. And if we built the game soundtrack around one of these styles, whether it's the right choice or not, if it was cohesive, it would fit, it would feel right. Now I've checked out this game. I know what it sounds like. It sounds a little bit somewhere in between the realistic and the stylized sounds. But yeah, the whole soundtrack is cohesive. It all sounds like it fits in the world of the game, so it feels right. Now, if anyone's familiar with the game Unpacking, this is from a Australian studio, Witchbeam Games, and Jeff Van Dyke and Angela Van Dyke were the audio team for this project, and they've actually released a year or so ago to great success. They've won awards across all categories, including audio. So, being a stylized game, pixel art, it's hard to deliver information by the visuals alone. So what the sound does is it fills in the gaps between what you see and what you're meant to feel. So whether it's a stylistic choice or a technical limitation, audio can be used to fill the gap and deliver information to the player. So if you haven't played the game, the sound is incredibly detailed. Every object on every surface makes a sound that's unique, which tells you about the weight of the object, all sorts of things, what it's made of. So it's very detailed, and it fits. I know when they were at the start of this project, they were not sure whether to go for a chiptune sort of sound to fit the visuals, but they did decide to go for this hyper-realistic sort of approach, and it ended up working really well. There is a really good podcast with Jeff Van Dyke and Angela Van Dyke on the Emily Reese podcast, I believe. and they go into detail on that. It's a great episode to listen to if you're a podcast listener. And that's where I got the idea for having this slide up. So yeah, thanks guys. Another example about being resourceful with audio, perhaps in a different way. Stefan Schutz is an Australian game audio designer and composer. One of his early projects, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, they were coming up towards the end of the project, and they needed to have a helicopter in the level circling the player. I'm not sure what for, maybe to deliver, or sort of guide the player to a certain location, or to tell them you're running out of time. But they didn't have the resources to add a visual effect of a helicopter circling the player. So they needed to get something in. Fortunately, they already had some helicopter audio in the game, so they recycled that using the same asset in order to convey to the player, hey, there's a helicopter somewhere in the world. You can't see it, but you can hear it, so you know it's there. And that did what they wanted it to do. It delivered that information to the player at a low cost because the sound was already in the game. So we're going to talk about a game of resources, which is sort of what that was about. And I've got some more sound examples here from my studios, just some games that we've worked on. I'll just play these, and you'll see that they're very different sounds. We've got some more complex sounds with a few layers. So just a bunch of different sounds, some more gritty combat sounds, some deep stuff, some UI sort of sounds, another complex one like creatures and sci-fi. So a lot of these have quite a large frequency range. They're sharp. They also have some bass in them. Just some more basic sounds. And loops. So some of these are one-shots, some of them are loops. But they do all have one thing in common, and that is they are all the same length and the same size. So all those sounds are designed to do different things, to convey different messages to the players. But they do have all this in common, and I will admit I did cut these specifically for IGDC, so perhaps in a real development scenario, these all would have been different lengths, and they might have all been different formats as well. But for this example, they're all 24, 48 WAVs, and they're all that size, all mono. So we're just going to talk a bit about how this might look integrating them into Unity. So of course, all these sounds were the same size before we put them in the project. But of course, not everything gets implemented the same way. So there's complex sounds, and particularly dialogue or voice assets you'd want to have implemented in Unity at a higher quality. Those more simple sounds, like the retro sound and that basic sound, in terms of the Unity compression, you could probably slam them and they'd still sound okay. Or optimize the sample rate and they would still sound okay. So not all sounds get implemented the same way. So it can end up looking more like this. Now, of course, once you've got your Vorbis compression format, you probably don't need to lower the quality much below 50%. But if you're really struggling for size, you could do that. So if anyone's not familiar with these formats, Vorbis is the MP3. If you're familiar with MP3, it's a similar format. It's compressed down to a small size, but this comes at a cost to CPU, which is required to decompress the audio in order to play. Now this format's probably best for medium length sound effects or music. We've got another option there, which is PCM, which is the uncompressed format. And this results in a higher file size, of course, as you can see, but it is less CPU intensive because it doesn't need to decompress before it's able to be played. Now, there is a middle ground between these two, and that's ADPCM, Adaptive Differential Pulse Code Modulation, for those watching at home. And yeah, that's sort of the middle ground. It's a smaller file size than PCM, but it's also less demanding on CPU compared to the Vorbis. And that's probably better for the shorter, complex sounds that need to be played often. For example, footsteps, maybe some impacts if you've got a combat-heavy game, weapons, and yeah, PCM better for short sound effects, maybe not played so often, just because it is a high file size. And this is all to save, make your loads quicker. It doesn't need to load so much audio into the game. So we've got a few different types for loading. Decompress on load, which is better for smaller compressed sounds to avoid the performance overhead of decompressing on the fly. So decompressing Vorbis encoded sounds on load will use actually 10 times more memory than keeping them compressed. Compressed to memory is the other option, and that's decompresses the sound while playing. Usually best for larger file sizes, where the decompression on load would use a lot of memory. And streaming, of course, it decodes on the fly. This uses very little memory. So these are your options, but what does this all mean for mobile projects? I was going to create a cheat sheet for this. However, a colleague of mine, Xander Hulme from Supertonic in Australia, had done a really good job already. So if you're new to implementing audio in your Unity game, these are some sort of, start here. And of course, this doesn't cover every project in every scenario, but if you're starting off implementing audio in your Unity game, this is probably a good place to start. And I'd encourage everyone to check out that article, Getting More RAM for Your BAM. That's by Xander Hulme, another Australian game audio designer and founder of Supertonic. So once again, our network back home in Australia includes Xander and Stefan and all those other people that we've brought up today. So of course, this, your mileage may vary, and best to use this as a starting off point, and then go from there, because every project's different. If you've got one giant scene in your game, the way that you import audio and handle audio is going to look different to have if you have like an RPG game, for example, where multiple scenes. Some scenes are more strictly combat, some scenes are strictly exploratory. Those import behaviors are going to be much different to each other. Starting off, you probably want to have your short sounds compressed in memory, especially if they're being triggered often. Your less common sounds, you'd probably want to have them decompress on load, just because you will get a little spike every time that happens. And your long looping pieces, so like ambience, environmental sounds, music, you can stream those. Cool. Let's move on. So everything we've talked about so far, the traditional or the most common format of audio in games is just the pre-rendered assets is not the only way to do it. So if you were here yesterday and saw the procedural audio talk, you'd know that you can create your own synthesizers in your engine. So the talk yesterday was on Unity. This is a screenshot from Metasounds in UE5. So this is not a new concept. If you're familiar with how sort of the old gaming platforms handled audio, like the Game Boy, those created sounds on the fly using the audio card, on the device. However, this is a more modern and more sophisticated way of handling procedural audio generation. This pretty much acts as a giant synthesizer, so you can set up these DSP graphs in, or in this case, it's Metasounds. However, you can do the same thing in any platform really. So instead of triggering assets that we've made beforehand, this is generating them in the engine, just like a synthesizer does. And you get sample accurate timing. This is made for sound designers with little to no coding experience. I mean, if anyone's used blueprints before, you know that it's pretty accessible for people who aren't too code savvy, which covers a lot of sound designers. And this is resourceful too. I believe this just gets turned into a C++ script. And so like you can do with traditional audio, you can feed this system parameters from the game to affect the way that the sound behaves and evolve over time. So really, really good for staying resourceful, really good for keeping the game sounding interesting if you're changing it over time based on game conditions. So that's the other main way of doing it, and that's getting more and more accessible to people, especially with meta sounds. So these aren't the only tools. We've talked a lot about Unity so far, but there's lots of tools and middleware solutions for sound designers. So I'm sure everyone's already got a bit of an idea of what you can do in Unity without any plugins. I'm sure you're also aware that scripts are your friends. Pretty much anything you want to do with audio, it can be scripted. However, this is very time intensive for programmers, especially on small teams. You might be the solo developer, so you're the programmer designer. I've worked on a project with it's just a solo developer, and asking him to create any audio tools for me is stopping him from doing something else. So in cases like that, we use middleware like this. Just to get a bit of an idea, who develops in Unity in the room? Yeah, a few of you. What about Unreal? Yeah, a few of you as well. Okay. What about Godot, or something else? Yep, cool. So mostly Unity. So you're probably familiar with Master Audio, which is that one, and Sonity is a new one, and of course FMod's got a built-in Unity plugin. So it sort of brings us into this other section, bang for buck. So we're going to look at a few different tools and see what they can do for us, how we can get the most bang for our sound asset buck. So yeah, common problem in game development, you want to keep the game size small. You don't want to bloat the game with a dozen variations of every sound. Just to keep it interesting, you want to get the most that you can from any one or two assets or a handful of assets. So we'll look at a few different tools that are available to us. This is just a screenshot from the Unity store. You can see FMod that we looked at before, Sonity there. Tons of options, large and small. You've got options that will basically replace the built-in audio system down to smaller options that just solve specific problems, including like game audio scripting essentials and stuff like that. So there are tons of options there for anyone looking to solve any one or two or every problem in their game in terms of audio. Common one is Master Audio. So if you've used Unity, you're probably familiar with Master Audio. It's been around for a while. They've just released a 2022 update. Lots of functionality that the bigger audio middleware engines have, but perhaps a little more basic, but you run it straight out of the editor. That's just some screenshots from in the editor. So this is used by studios, small and large. Zynga, King Isle use Master Audio, I think. I've personally used this on my project, Train Conductor World, which I think I mentioned before. I believe the developers of Super Auto Pets also use this, which I did some sounds for. So it makes it very easy to implement sound if you don't want to invest in one of the bigger solutions. And very easy to get a sound designer set up, creating interactive audio systems with minimal coding required. So some of the features of Master Audio is audio occlusion, which is obviously an advanced feature, but Master Audio makes it easy to get started, which is obviously useful for 3D games, especially if first-person shooter games. If you want to localize an enemy in space, you'll need to get that audio occlusion happening to accurately know where they're coming from. Master Audio also boasts saving memory, all sorts of stuff. Easy multiplayer with multiplayer broadcast options, lots of different stuff. I'd encourage you to check it out online. This one is you purchase it in the Unity store, usually $79 to $99 US. So it's a one-off purchase, and that's similar to this other solution. This is actually quite a new one, Sonity. It's by a team called Sonigon, and they're a sound design studio based out in Sweden. So they built this, and they use it themselves in their projects. A bit cheaper than Master Audio. Sonity goes for $79 USD, but it's on sale for $39 since it's just come out. This is the one that's good if you've never used the middleware before. It's got a very friendly user interface. So again, like Master Audio, good for sound designers who are getting started implementing sound in their games. and like master audio, works straight out of the Unity editor. So that's another good one to get on top of. We're just going to fly through these today, so I'd encourage you to check out some options at home if you're thinking about investing in a plugin or a third-party tool to handle your audio. Next, of course, Unreal Engine. They have their blueprints and their sound cues. So in this screenshot, we've just got a few different sounds running through a mixer, which will play them all concurrently when this cue is triggered. Other nodes that you have available are randomizers, so you can get a selection of sounds to play at random. So really easy to get some dynamic audio system set up in Unreal with just the built-in tools. And of course, meta sounds that we mentioned before is built into Unreal Engine 5. Plenty of solutions that work with Unreal. Quartz is another sample accurate audio solution. And all sorts of powerful tools in Unreal if you're an Unreal dev looking to up your sound. So now we'll have a look at some of the bigger third-party tools. This is a screenshot of Wise, which is one of the leading audio middleware tools used in heaps of AAA projects. I can't even begin to name what projects this is used in. I think they have thousands of games using Wise. So some of the benefits of this is dynamic mixing. Pretty much everything you want to do with Wise, with audio, you can do with Wise. Some projects that use Wise as Borderlands, The Witcher, Destiny, tons of projects, mobile, VR, AR, all sorts. I'll let that sit there for a second. So if you want to create a game that has, a complex interactive audio system, Wise is probably one of the first ones you want to look at. It is a premium solution, so it does cost quite a bit. However, it has quite recently introduced an indie-friendly option. So if you're a smaller dev or an indie dev and your budget is below a certain number, Wise is actually free to use and you don't need to pay the license fee. However, once you start, making some cash, it does become quite expensive, but it scales with your business. So it's 10 minutes to go, I think. Yeah. Cool. Fmod, one of the other big ones, rival to Wise. Personally, I use Fmod a lot. They're a Melbourne-based company, the Firelight Studios. Some popular games that use Fmod are Hades, Fall Guys, Celeste, Dino Squad, Game of War, all sorts, and again, across all platforms. So yeah, they're made in Melbourne. They've got quite good support. I personally know the guy who works for their support in Melbourne now. A big attraction of Fmod is its appearance. It's very friendly for anyone coming from an audio background to get started, and that's because it looks a lot like a digital audio workstation. So yeah, many of the same features as Wise, live editing. What we're looking at here in this screenshot is the profiler. So we're looking at sort of performance, and what you would want to do with Fmod is have it open while the game is playing. So there's lots of live editing you can do and live data. So that project I had on the slide a few slides ago, that was a game called Shape Arcade, and I used Fmod for that just to create some dynamic music systems that reacted to the player. We're pretty running out of time, so I won't show the trailer. You can see this online. But it's going to play anyway. No, don't worry. Okay, we'll watch it. It wants to be watched. Okay, cool. You get it. So yeah, puzzle game coming to mobile and also physical. So with this project, I just created some really basic interactive audio systems that evolve as you progress through the game, and also they react to how you're performing. So there's like sort of horizontal and vertical editing going on here. So when you're progressing through the game, as you get to higher and higher levels, you're able to jump to the next section of music. And as you do poorly or as you're performing well in the game, sort of the mix changes. So different tracks are brought in, If you're about to lose, most of the tracks will fade away, and you'll just have this like pulsing beat. So what that does is it provides feedback to the player, and also keeps them immersed. So if they're playing well, if they're in the zone, they're locked in. And if they're about to lose, they know it, they feel it. Cool. Fmod, a bit cheaper than Wise. It's always had an indie-friendly option. So yeah, once again, if you're a small developer, Fmod's really easy to get into, and unless you're making a lot of money, you won't have to pay anything. So the free indie license is available for developers with less than $200,000 revenue. I'm pretty sure that's USD per year. So yeah, there you go. So while we're talking about money, what's this all going to cost? It's very well to talk about all these tools, but if you're a small developer or a solo dev, you've probably already invested in a ton of tools. Now all these options, all these middleware tools are designed to give your audio team, more power and take pressure off, like a programming team. So if you don't have a dedicated audio programmer, which a lot of studios don't, these tools are probably for you. They'll require a little bit from you just to set them up, but once they're set up, it gives the audio team a lot of power to do what they want, do what they can. Personally, I do a lot of this. We get set up in a project with Fmod. We use that a lot. Jump into the source control, and then we ping the devs, hey, check this out, get the latest, check this out. So it does save time and money ultimately, and it stops, prevents you from needing to create a ton of custom tools. So engaging with a sound team, there's no fixed price that I can give you because it does depend on project to project and team to team, all sorts of variables. Mainly also depends on whether you're engaging a sound team, just getting a few assets from them, or if you're integrating them into your team. So if you're on a bigger project, getting a sound team involved early, you probably want to integrate them into your team. That way they can, ooh, that's time. Is that 5 minutes or is that? Okay, cool, 5 minutes, yeah, cool. So yeah, smaller teams probably engaging a sound design on a per asset level, and they're just handing it over files. That's a really easy way to do it. But just with your sound, it does pay off to get the sound team involved with the project and get them making decisions about the direction and all sorts of things. That's what results in a better sounding game and a game that sort of sticks around in people's minds for longer. Because sound, like all other art styles, is it's art. So it isn't created instantly. It is possible to create sounds very quickly or find sounds online for particularly for free. However, usually these are not going to give you a cohesive audio experience. And of course, you can do it yourself as well. But if you're a small developer, you're probably doing a lot of things at once, and it costs time. And also, if you're working with a dedicated audio team, they've already made the mistakes that you're probably about to make. So this graphic is actually by a friend of mine who, he does 3D modeling for silly things. And of course, sound designers create sounds in many different ways. So you might not have access to field recording equipment, equipment for synthesizing music or sounds. All the above. There's no rules. Cool. So we're running out of time, so I'll just give you a quick summary. Sound plays an important role in games, and it is it makes the world feel alive and reactive. Makes your game feel better to the player, sticks around in their head for longer. And plenty of tools exist to make your game sound better at less of a cost. I'll wrap it up there, but thanks for sticking around. Cheers. So you can reach us on any platform. If you've got any questions, feel free to come see me afterwards. I'll be here the rest of today. And if you're creating a project and you're not sure where to start with sound, feel free to reach out. We can always give you a no obligation. Take a look at your project and figure out what exactly you need. And it doesn't have to be any obligations. It just be a consultation. But cheers.
Thanks, Matt. I actually got a lot of answers to a lot of your PPTs that you presented here.
Cheers.
Still have three questions actually.
Yeah.
Firstly, how how does sound work? If it's, say for example, of a racing game wherein a car
Mm.
has to be driven, and it's not a particular sound file that is to be played.
So how does sound work? No one knows. Sorry to tell you.
No. What I'm asking is, how does sound work in a game? Say, for example, if it's to be generated for a car, wherein the moment we're pressing the throttle, the sound increases, and how does it work in that
Yeah,
scenario?
and that's a hard one. And there are some custom tools that you can use that are built just for racing games. I think Rev software is one of them. And what that'll do is allow you to import a file of a car engine, and it'll actually scrub through that. And if you're accelerating, it'll play the accelerating part of the file. Decelerating, it'll play that. So that's a really easy tool to check out. Check out Rev. Otherwise, procedural generation, as mentioned in the talk yesterday, that's another really good option for things like engine sounds, and I think also waterfalls were one of the ones mentioned. But there's tons of options there. Can be assets that you create beforehand, or it can be created on the fly. Just depends on what tools you have available or what tools you want to invest in.
Okay, and the other was you showed the Unreal, the blueprint one. So are you saying just like how Max for Live works, wherein we can create whatever synthesizer we want? So even using Unreal, just whatever sort of synthesizer we want, we can just create out of it. I mean, like that's something that was quite novel for me.
Yeah, so that is one of those things that it just depends on how much skill the person creating the DSP graph has, because it does work like a synthesizer. If you've got experience in digital audio workstations creating synth patches, you'll probably pick that up very quickly. But it can be as complex or as easy as you want. It can just create the most basic of waveforms, or it can create complex sounds, including like engine sounds or other natural sounds. But I'd encourage you to check out the documentation online for that one, because honestly, you can talk about that all day. Cool.
All right, thanks.
Cheers. Yeah. Oh yeah, got one here.
Hi, thank you, Matt.
Cheers.
So, I have one question. Like, can we use sound to reduce motion sickness in VR games or VR experiences?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that is a common problem with VR. I think with sound is most of the challenge with VR is making it feel real. So you want sound to be localized very accurately, just to help the player feel like they can believe that they're in the world that they're seeing,
Right.
and that will help bridge the gap between just looking at a world and feeling like they're in it. So I think that's probably the challenge you want to solve, is just making it feel more believable.
I want to solve the motion sickness problem. Like,
Yep.
you can make it more realistic, but problem is like while wearing the headset, maximum 20 minutes or an hour, you can go for it. Okay. After that, you feel dizziness and all those symptoms comes in. So can we use sound to solve this problem or not? That's my question.
Yeah, and that is a hard one. I'm not too sure. You would have to, I think, just make it sound as, it depends on what sort of game it is. If it's a very sort of action-heavy game, you might need to sort of have some periods of time where it's toned down a bit.
Right.
If it's like a sort of very realistic game,
Right.
you would just need to lean into that and make it sort of make the sound match what you're seeing, I think, is the idea or the goal for that. But,
Okay.
I don't know if I can give you more of a
Okay.
nuanced answer right now. But,
Okay, I got it.
But yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Cool. I think that was everything. Or all we have time for. I think I'm getting ushered out. Cool. Thank you very much.